Welcome to College Recruiter. I'm Anna Peters, and I'm joined by Nancie Ruder today, who is the owner of Noetic Consulting. And they're a marketing consulting firm that provides strategy and process and facilitation expertise to advertising and marketing firms. Nancie was invited to speak at the SHRM 2018 conference, and she'll be presenting her presentation is called Unlocking Marketing Strategy to Optimize Recruitment. So I wanted to bring her in today so that we could get her insight into how effective recruitment marketing to college students, particularly in recent grads. So thanks, Nancie, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
First, let's talk a little bit about recruitment marketing to college students and how you've seen it change in recent years. How have you seen it change?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, there are some things that are tried and true that I believe will never change. And then there's some things that really have evolved. So the thing that I think will never change or never should change is that recruiting, first and foremost, really needs to be about keeping your customer front of mind, so that recruitee. And so that is both timeless and ever evolving, because what the recruitees or what I'm calling customers want will evolve with time. So as talent now is being recruited from the millennial audience into what's now called the Gen Z audience, recruitment really needs to work hard to be culturally relevant. Culture matters all the more to the current quote unquote customer. And so companies that are recruiting, if they can really think about what is the way in which they can very honestly and authentically attract the best recruits by being clear and communicating about what their culture is and what will enable people to excel in that culture. And I actually want to share a quote that I came upon. I couldn't find the specific source, but I'll just read it. The purpose of recruiting is to sell the job to the kinds of people who will flourish in your company. Mm-hmm. Thus, recruiting advertising attracts good candidates while simultaneously discouraging applicants who would not fit in your company culture. So it's as much about, who you want to attract and fit. And it's interesting that if you think about the college grads, it really gets emphasized these days for kids going into college that they really need to be looking for fit. Mm-hmm. And the same really is true when you think in terms of a company. So one of the big things that has changed is this increasing attention to culture. And oftentimes employers can think that means, we have to help people know that our culture is fun and, here are all the kind of get-togethers that we do. But you really have to be true and authentic to who you are and really understand what is it that these recruits want these days. Oftentimes it's not so much about having beer on tap at the office. It's far more about having growth opportunities, understanding the career path. These are, and giving back, and being mission-based. And I don't mean just for nonprofits, but, for all companies being mission-based. So these are the things that really have become more and more important. But at the end of the day, it's marrying that with who you are as a company authentically and your core values to try to find fit.
So on that note, do you advise your clients to lead their recruitment marketing with their purpose, especially with Gen Z? So less really about culture and fit and more about purpose. I mean, they're definitely intertwined, but how do you balance those?
Sure. So when we think about marketing strategy for anything, we always think in terms of a who, what, how framework, and we always lead with the who. So what you're speaking to is the what, which is very, very important, but the who gets at, who are we really trying to attract? What is it that, that also helps people know who we're not trying to attract. And then the what becomes really about that mission. So it's important to lead with the who so that you get the right people listening and you're actually talking to the right audience. And then, yes, really articulating at that higher order level, that's the what, that's the mission. Yes. And that's just as important as the how, which is how are you living that? What are the examples of how you actually bring that to life? Because people can ferret you out pretty quickly if you are, talking a good talk, but you don't really operationalize it.
Yeah, and I would say especially Gen Z who are seem to be kind of digitally cynical, overly marketed to, and will sniff
Yes.
out anything that isn't genuine and authentic.
Yeah, they're super savvy and they just feel it, right? Yeah, agree.
Let's talk a little bit about targeting quote unquote non-traditional students. And by that, I mean, let's include in that definition students who are at vocational schools, community colleges, online students, and even older college students who have gone back to school, because I've been seeing that a trend of more employers wanting to focus, or at least expand their reach a little bit into non-traditional students. Can you speak to how you would market those differently, that population?
Yes. And I'm very excited that that's happening, actually, because we have done a good deal of work in higher education and what's often called, adult learners, people who maybe went back to school, maybe they stopped and started, and there hasn't been near enough attention to folks like that. They're a very exciting audience to look at because they tend to be quite focused, and they tend to really have a good sense for what they're looking for. So first and foremost, it comes back to knowing your who, knowing that audience, and really determining and really listening well around what are their goals and seeing if there's a really good fit there. So if you're thinking in terms of perhaps, the younger folks like that tend to be more interested in skill development and career pathing. If you're talking to someone who maybe has started and stopped, they might be a little bit older. They might feel that they're quote unquote behind a little bit from where they would like to be. They're going to care about growth and they're going to care about career pathing, but they also are very interested in things like security and what are those internal promotion opportunities and how do I know if I'm doing well? What are the measures that are in place? So just really careful listening, because there's going to be a lot of uniqueness in those people's experiences. One of the key things we've learned about, again, what we call the adult learner, someone who maybe has started and stopped their education, is that there's a lot of emotion that has gone with that. Confidence levels, you can't assume that someone in that position has a confidence level that perhaps a straight out of undergrad, somebody who sailed all the way through, will have. So that's a very important part of understanding where they are emotionally and whether or not you feel they can succeed in your organization and whether they will feel that they can.
That's a good point. How can recruitment marketers, what are the metrics they should be looking at? And I'm thinking particularly of at a high level for the HR or the talent acquisition professional who is working with a marketing firm. So what, as a TA professional, what am I supposed to, how do I know that you're doing your job? What should I measure?
Yeah. So this is where marketing comes in really handy. There's a best practice out there, pretty kind of well known, although people don't employ it as often as they should, which is around setting what's called SMART goals. So SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. And so really figuring out, well, what are we trying to achieve, but then articulating it SMART, because when you articulate it SMART, you have all the pieces that you need to then set those metrics. So setting the table for having really good metrics is making sure that the goal part is clear. And then at the point at which you say, okay, I've got my SMART goal and I know what I'm kind of at a high level looking to achieve, you really want to try to break that down into really digestible metrics. And the metrics don't all have to be driving to hard numbers. They can be qualitative in nature as long as they're measurable. So you might, for example, say, you might have a metric around having a specific number of new hires that you want to achieve, right? But it may be just as important to have a metric around how many people you want to interview, or how many resumes you might want to collect, or how many significant conversations you may want to have. Those are considered more diagnostic measures. Because at the end of the day, if you're reaching out enough, you're giving yourself that opportunity. So in other words, if you want to hire 15 people, you can't just talk to 15 people. You probably need to talk to at least, 30. Or you may want to have an opportunity to say, we're really trying to expand in terms of, ethnicity, diversity, age, things of that nature. So you might want to make a goal around how you're going to consider 5 conferences that you've never attended before, and attend 3, right? So these kinds of measures really can keep you honest toward that SMART goal. And if you can have, 3 to 5 really hardworking metrics like that ultimately can speak to that goal, you might not achieve every one of the metrics, but you're certainly going to be in the ballpark of getting to that goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just think that's so important to align your goals or align your metrics with your goal, because it's so easy to come up with a number and track it. And then you have this whole data set, but what does it tell you?
Right.
Does it tell you that you are on track or not? And a lot of metrics, I think that recruiters track are not necessarily all that helpful.
Right.
So it's important to align them to your goals.
We also encourage having even if it's a small percentage of your budget, but some percentage of your budget toward the exploratory or the innovative, the things that you've not done before. So whether that might be things like attending a new conference that you've not done before, maybe it's getting involved in hackathons on campuses, maybe it's doing a case competition. If you don't continue to expand on the various methods that you're trying to use, or what in marketing we would call channels, they're in the marketing world, there's always the experimentation, the test and learn going on. And if you don't do that and you just sort of keep going back to the same quote unquote channels, you're going to get more of the same. So if you're really
you're using the same channels as everyone else too.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
That's a great point. Yeah. To be able to measure innovation somehow. So again, thinking of that TA leader so right now it's middle of April. And when we think of entry-level recruitment, many large organizations they've filled their intern positions already. But
right.
For, let's say, an organization out there that is struggling, what can they do right now, marketing, to get some traction and attract students and grads?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is really trying to be as just in time with your applicants as possible. So when you have people, you have any kind of a pool of people, and you think that you have some attractive applicants within that, the more you can be very high touch and very quickly responsive to them, the better chance you're going to have of retaining that best talent. It's just, the law of the numbers, the best talent is the most sought after and goes quickly. And so especially if you feel like you're a little bit behind the 8 ball, if you have an applicant pool, you really want to dig in and you want to be that Johnny on the spot to really be there for them. One of the things that's super disheartening, especially, it's for all of us, right? But especially for those young applicants, is when a firm recruiting goes dark. That customer experience for them really becomes the brand. That's the brand experience. So I think moving quickly and being as high touch as possible and really listening to what that applicant has to say and really looking in that Venn diagram of what are they looking for versus who are we as an organization, and trying to look for that best fit. Move fast.
Yep.
That's probably not great news too. There's a lot of other things to do, right? And when recruiters go dark, and I say this to young people all the time, when someone goes dark, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It just means busyness a lot of times.
Yeah. Yes.
But still, it has a negative feeling if you're the customer.
Yeah. It doesn't feel good. Can you think of examples of recruitment marketing especially as Gen Z and all the differences that we're seeing and hearing about Gen Z compared to millennials? Have you seen some marketing campaigns that have just flopped, like just not resonated with students, and why?
Yeah, I struggled with this one, Anna. And what I ended up doing, I was like trying to think about.
You don't have to call out the brand.
I was trying to think about flops. Like I see flops in the general marketplace all the time, but sometimes when I see things that make me scratch my head, I think, well, maybe there's something they're trying to do that I'm just sort of not understanding. But what I did end up in my investigation of thinking about some flops, I actually thought of two that I thought were especially great that I would love to quickly share, if that's
Yes.
okay. I'm sort of twisting your question, but
You're positively focused.
um, so I do tend to do that.
I
Yeah.
tried to make you negative.
So Nestle, and I'm in the Washington, D.C. area, and we're really excited to have Nestle local now. They've moved their headquarters here from California, which is pretty exciting just for the broader D.C. area. But they, in the last few years, they had been struggling to attract talent from U.S. universities, especially in the Midwest region. And they really do like to be geographically dispersed as well as diverse in other ways. So they set about creating an ambassador program that just seemed especially thoughtful. That they essentially wanted to generate more buzz around, a career at Nestle and really what that meant. And so they did a lot of on-campus promotion and events to get the word out. And then I think they call them Nestle street teams. These ambassadors, they were out literally like distributing chocolates at events and offering information. And it was a lot of the kind of for the people, by the people, because they took a lot of their own young people and they went into business schools and engineering schools to really sort of promote what the company was really about. They also became a lot more active on social media in talking about that. So I think they just really upped their game in terms of relevance. And while they did it in a grassroots way, it was very replicable. They were really able to take that sort of campus to campus. So I thought that was very thoughtful and very powerful, that if you're a young person and you see other young people like you who seem really, really jazzed, that can be very powerful. LinkedIn is a completely different kind of example. Oftentimes we see career fairs, right? Career fairs happen all the time. LinkedIn did what was just sort of a different format. They did a career week. And so they held various focused events across a week. So they had like a whole variety of things. They did one particular session for female students. They did, I think, 5 or 6 in-depth technical talks. They did some like pop your profile, they called them, events where students could learn best practices and building out their profile. So they did it in like these bite-sized chunks, which is very apropos of where especially that Gen Z audience is with, how they like to digest content as opposed to kind of committing to a whole day. And they also were able to get in front of a lot more of a diverse audience by doing it in that manner, because they kind of parsed it out. In certain cases, they parsed it out by a need, like how do you improve your profile? And then in other instances, they did it by, a gender or an age or a specific, career focus. So anyway.
Were they were offering help to students to improve their LinkedIn profiles with the ultimate agenda of recruiting them? Is that what their
bet.
goal is? Yeah.
You bet.
Cool. Yeah. And I think, again, more and more Gen Z seems to want that two-way street. Like if I'm going to give you something, you have to give me something in return.
Right. Right. They want to get the value, right.
Yeah.
And have some sort of an authentic exchange.
Yeah, exactly. Great. Good examples, even though they weren't flops.
Yeah. Sorry, I twisted your question. Sorry.
No, that's great. Is there anything else you want to leave the conversation with regarding?
I just want to say how excited I am to go to SHRM this year, because I lived in Chicago for many years, and it's going to be in the Windy City. So I'm super excited to go. And I'm excited about my topic in that I just really think that at the end of the day, marketing and the essence of that really can help recruiting. And it's an increasingly tough marketplace out there on both sides, and so I think that quote unquote customer understanding can really go a long way for the companies recruiting and for all these applicants who really just want to land, a great place to be and grow.
Great. It's going to be great. Well, good luck with your presentation.
Thank you. I might need a little bit of that.
No,